underscores political goodwill in anti-corruption fight. TBC aims higher in telling African stories beyond Africa.
That will be in English, yes, also for international audiences.
Good evening. Thank you very much for joining us. My name is Nasa Kingu. Just a reminder, you can also follow us live via our YouTube channel, TBC Online, and also get all the latest news through our Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter pages at TBC Online. And we start with a story on the appointment which has been made by President Samia Suluhu Hassan, appointing and swearing in Suleiman Abubakar Mombo as the new Director General of the Tanzania Intelligence and Security Services, TIS. Prior to the appointment, Mombo was a senior officer, President's office. Mombo replaces Ambassador Ali Idi Siwa, who has retired. Moving now to Zanzibar, where the President of Zanzibar and the Chairman of the Revolutionary Council, Dr. Hussein Ali Mwinyi, says his government will ensure that all international agreements signed, especially on fighting corruption, do reach intended goals. He insists that fighting against corruption remains to be the priority of the Tanzanian government. Dr. Mwinyi made the assurance during the commemoration of the African Anti-Corruption Day in Chimpanzee, Unguja, the day that was held nationally in the islands of Zanzibar.
Serikali ya Mapinduzi ya Zanzibar na Serikali ya Jamhuri ya Muungano wa Tanzania.
The Revolutionary Government of Zanzibar and the Government of the United Republic of Tanzania ensure that the various international agreements we enter into, especially this one of combat corruption, must achieve their goal at the intended peace we want, because the fight against the corruption and the corruption of public asset is the priority of our governments, and I argue our citizens to also cooperate with the responsible institutions that fight to end corruption, to end this deal.
President of Zanzibar, Dr. Hussein Ali Mwinyi, asserts that corruption weakens institutional systems and affects economic development plans, and is among the crimes that cross borders. Tanzania has received an additional aid of 8.9 billion Tanzanian shillings for the implementation of the Kigoma Port Rehabilitation Project, following the amendment of the two aid agreements between Tanzania and the Japan International Cooperation Agency, JICA, and the Embassy of Japan. Agreements for the amendment has been signed by the Permanent Secretary and Minister of Finance, Dr. Natu Mwamba, on behalf of the government of Tanzania, Ambassador of Japan in Tanzania, Yasushi Misawa, and the resident representative of the Japan International Cooperation Agency, JICA, in Tanzania, Hitoshi Ara, on behalf of the government of Japan. Here are more details.
Speaking after the signing of the amended agreements, Dr. Mwamba elaborates that initially the government of Japan, through the agreement signed on February 4, 2022, provided assistance of 44.42 billion shillings for the rehabilitation of the port. She says that the total aid provided by the Japanese government is 3.27 billion Japanese yen. She says added funds now amounting to 53.35 billion shillings aims to bridge the gap caused by the depreciation of the Japanese yen and the Tanzanian shillings compared to the US dollar.
Fedha zilizoongezwa zinalenga kuziba pengo.
The increased funds aim to close the gap caused by the collapse of the value of the Japanese yen and Tanzanian shilling compared to the US dollar, due to the fact that the workforce to be used, construction materials, and other requirements for the implementation of the projects are paid in these two currencies, that is the Japanese yen and the Tanzanian shilling.
Dr. Mwamba has assured that the Japanese government of Tanzania's commitment to ensure that the project is fully implemented to achieve the intended goals.
Anawahakikishia kwamba serikali ya Jamhuri ya Muungano wa Tanzania,
they assure you that the government of the United Republic of Tanzania will take all the necessary steps to ensure that this project is fully implemented to achieve the intended goals.
Interesting story there from the Kigoma region. Now from Kigoma we move to Dodoma, where the Director General of the Tanzania Broadcasting Corporation, Dr. Ayubu Rioba, vows to implement the long-term plan of establishing an English broadcasting station as part of ensuring that the African narrative and perspective extends beyond the continent. Speaking in exclusive interview with TBC News in Dodoma, Tanzania, Dr. Rioba says that it is imperative for Africans to take control of their narrative in global sphere, a sentiment that is echoed by the Director General of the Voice of Nigeria, Jibrin Ndache. Here are both the Director General of TBC and the Director General of Voice of Nigeria talking to my colleague Faida Ngaga.
The Voice of Nigeria has, just like TBC, has a vast history in the media landscape in Africa and in Nigeria indeed. Tell us about that short history. We understand that the Voice of Nigeria broadcasts in 8 languages. Some of them are international and some of them are just local languages. Can you pass us through that history and experience?
Yeah, thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak to the Tanzania audience. And Voice of Nigeria, by the wisdom of our founding fathers, the founding father of Nigeria were very clear about at independence, about the place of Nigeria both on the continent of Africa and around the world. And they believed that one of the instruments of national power, which was going to deploy in terms of diplomacy, in terms of speaking for Nigeria, indeed Africa, is to have a voice that will shape narrative, not just for Nigeria and Nigeria, but for Africa and African. It was established at independent, and in 1990 became an independent organization. It was at the early stage part of as external broadcast, and late Professor Chinua Achebe was its first director. And in 1990, it became an independent organization. I'm currently the 6th Director General. I was appointed by the President and Commander-in-Chief, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, on October 19, Thursday, October 19, 2023.
What does the future look like between the Voice of Nigeria and the Tanzania Broadcasting Corporation with regards to the cooperation that you have?
We're already in the future. We have started the exchange, as I said earlier. We have started the exchange, and I think where we are going to focus now is actually in terms of sharing content, which doesn't have to take much effort. Sharing content, and our representative Ramadhani Penda is there in Abuja. He will be helping with also the training of Kiswahili to Nigerians who are there in the service. He will be helping in editing, but like I said earlier, he will also be sending, some content here. And likewise, a Nigerian will be coming here. We also, of course, he will be working with you in the English service. We also have, right now we have only a bulletin in English, which is broadcast once in a day, but we are planning to have a channel that will be in English. Yes, also for international audiences. And so with that cooperation, and I'm sure with others, as I've said, I think we can. I mean, if you get people with the right mindset, just like Jibrin, he's younger, but still he has that, when you discuss things, you see that, Pan-African bond, and I think that's important. Some people think if you talk about Pan-Africanism is something of the past, it's not true. Pan-Africanism is about us. It's our identity. And the world, the way it is, every nation that you see, they have issues with identity. And they're always looking for what we call interests, national interests. People look at what their interests are. No one will actually come out there and say they're coming to look at your interest first before you look at your own interest. You have to start by and that can only happen if you cooperate.
We come now to the commercial city of Dar es Salaam, where the Executive Secretary of the African Peer Review Mechanism, APRM, Lamau Mpolo, says APRM has been productive in pushing forward the economic development agenda in Africa. He made the remarks in Dar es Salaam during the 8PRM Stakeholders Workshop for the upcoming Tanzania's APRM Popular Sensitization Project, which aims to enhance the participation of the civil society in Tanzania's African Peer Review Mechanism process. Rehema Sababili has more details.
Speaking on the program, Lamau said that Tanzania's 2013 APRM evaluation report was fruitful following the program's recommendation that Tanzania should enhance its business climate, promote joint venture initiatives, and adjust its tax rules.
The strengthening of the APR Secretariat clearly demonstrates the dedication and commitment of the government of Tanzania and the able leadership of our President, His Excellency Dr. Samia Suluhu Hassan, to continue improvement in the APR process and seeing the philosophy of APRM is implemented successfully in the country.
What the APRM report back in 2013 mentioned was that there were shortcomings in as far as the implementation of some of these policies was concerned. It brought up issues in relation to inequality, brought up issues in relation to the business environment, issues in relation to investment, as well as issues in relation to the taxation regime. Now, we've seen considerable reforms being implemented to address some of these issues. So in a way, you can say that Tanzania has stayed the course in as far as implementing some of the recommendations from that particular report is concerned.
The other areas, for instance, corporate governance, the report talks about the need for Tanzanians to be empowered, to be able to participate in running the economy. Tanzanians have to become investors. We don't have to be inviting investors from abroad. Tanzanians, we have to reach a stage where Tanzanians are now investing in their own country.
On the other hand, the head of African Governance and Diplomacy at the South African Institute for International Affairs, Stephen Graz, insists that APRM has been effective in solving challenges in South Africa.
I mean, in South Africa, one of the major issues that was identified in the first report in 2007 was on xenophobia and violence towards migrants. And that's been a very prominent issue that has been taken up by government and plans have been put in place. I mean, one of the things was saying that the cabinet was too big in South Africa. That's one thing we didn't listen to because we've just had our new government come in with a very, very big cabinet. So you know, a lot of it depends on the political will of the implementing country and the government.
The APRM is Africa's premier governance self-assessment and promotion tool, where its purpose is to foster the adoption of policies, standards, and practice that lead to political stability, high economic growth, sustainable development, and accelerated sub-regional and continental economic integration through reinforcement of best practice. Reporting from Dar es Salaam, Rehema Sababili, TBC News.
The report on media coverage of solar energy and productive use of solar energy in agriculture in East Africa has been launched today with an objective of assessing how the media reports on solar energy issues and provide evidence to form transformations needed to improve media practitioners' coverage on productive use of solar energy. Kanki Mogemole has more details on that.
Focusing on newspapers and television across East Africa on coverage of solar energy issues and the productive use of solar energy in agriculture, the report also highlights challenges that hinder wider coverage and emphasis on solar energy-related stories. The chairperson of Tanzania Editors Forum, Deodato Spalile, highlights the importance of the training, especially to journalists and editors, to equip them better to communicate more effectively to the society on the importance of solar energy in agriculture.
Today we are holding a brief training for journalists and reporters on solar energy for farming, where our journalists, our reporters have never been trained on anything related to solar energy. And the farmers are set to benefit from the use of solar energy as it reduces the cost of production.
The representative of the African Center for Media Excellence from Uganda, Brian Senabulia, who is also the program manager and media researcher, says the training targets to bridge the gaps emerging in solar energy reportages.
The program looks at improving communication and engagement around off-grid solar solutions. So part of the project was to assess media performance. What is the state of affairs? How is the media performing in regards to covering issues around renewable energy?
The renewable energy, especially for solar, it's a new one. So we as a journalist, we need to bring it up to the eye of our communities so they can take action. For instance, in farming, this most of our communities, they are using solar for domestic purpose. So we need to transform our agricultural sector to use solar to push for results.
Solar energy, it has come to the time when our president is insisting on a clean energy for cooking, and now we can see how we can relate, because solar energy is clean energy. Although not all clean energy is solar energy, but we can capitalize on that to see now how the media can encourage the audience, first of all, to embark to solar energy in agriculture, especially in irrigation, because we know we have a lot of water sources, and the challenge has been how to get that water to irrigate our farms.
The baseline report coverage of solar energy reveals the shortcomings on the field of journalism in East Africa, such as the dominance of conventional event-based reporting and gender imbalanced sourcing, highlighting that the media industry in Kenya, Tanzania, and Uganda does not treat solar energy and solar energy use in agriculture as a public issue, as evidenced by the limited coverage. Many potential stories on solar energy are sometimes left behind, remaining unreported. Kanki Mwaigomole, TBC.
African countries have been urged to invest in research so as to set better and smarter vision on economic and social development. The call has been made during the 2024 Africa Evidence Summit, a summit that brings together researchers from various countries around the world. My colleague Peter Mganga attended the summit and has prepared the following report.
According to BMC Public Health, Africa comprises 15% of the world's population, but bears 25% of the global diseases burden and produces only 2% of the world's research output. Africa Evidence Summit is an annual in-person gathering that brings together East and West African scholars, US-based faculty, and global policymakers and practitioners to discuss the latest evidence on economic development and poverty alleviation in Africa. Professor Adolf Mkenda, with the Minister of Education, Science and Technology, explains how Tanzania uses research to solve social and economic challenges.
Kweli ni muhimu sana wakati tunapotunga sera na kutekeleza sera.
There is a great importance of policy evaluation, not only to know what kind of result we want, but also to get better result instead of formulating policies without evaluating. And this is what Tanzania's government often does, and we will make sure that we put more efforts on research and analysis.
On the other hand, Professor Edward Miguel, who is economist at University of California and director of SIGA, who are part of organizers of Africa Evidence Summit, emphasizes on the use of artificial intelligence towards contribution of structuring proper research documents for the betterment of solving challenges among African countries.
The issue of artificial intelligence is really the future. It's here with us. It's going to affect the research world. It's going to affect policy. A number of the research studies in the SIGA network are using artificial intelligence. They're using machine learning. And so I think that's a really exciting frontier and something that we're working hard on.
Furthermore, the Executive Director of African Population and Health Research Center, APHRC, Dr. Catherine Yubotongi, praises the contribution of research towards Africans' development, as well as urges public and private sector to collaborate together so that to push socio-economic development of African countries.
Research is not useful if it's not done properly. And when I say that research is done properly, it means that the people who are supposed to use that research were involved in the research itself. And so what is interesting here is that a lot of the research which is being presented, actually the researchers worked with different departments in government.
This is the 12th edition of African Evidence Summit, whereby it's approximated that more than 700 researchers across African continent joining hands together to discuss and to innovate the best way on how they can rectify the challenges which has been faced by different communities across African countries. This is the second summit to be held here in Tanzania. I'm Peter Mganga, TBC News, Dar es Salaam.
Thank you very much, Peter Mganga, for that report. Director General of the Tanzania Trade Development Authority, TanTrade, Latifa Hamis, says Tanzania and India have traditionally enjoyed close, friendly, and cooperative relations. Latifa made the remarks during the India National Day, which was marked at the Dar es Salaam International Trade Fair grounds, calling on more Indian investors to invest in Tanzania.
It stands as a significant platform in Africa, uniting trade, culture, technology, innovation, to foster impactful business relationships that benefit both local and international companies. Karibuni sana. Sabasaba is a very useful platform. TanTrade is a premier government institution mandated to develop and promote Tanzanian goods and services in domestic and international market by linking product to market.
On the other hand, the Indian High Commissioner designate here in Tanzania, Bishwadip Day, says the relation between Tanzania and India grows day by day.
For our reconciliation, resilience, reforms, and rebuilding.
Now, moving on to other stories, the founder of the Jane Goodall Institute, Dr. Jane Goodall, says a large percentage of chimpanzees found in Gombe National Parks are in danger of disappearing due to climate change and animal diseases, calling for urgent steps to address the issue. Dr. Goodall made the remarks while visiting the Tanzania Commission for Science and Technology, COSTECH, as part of acknowledging the Commission's support to her institution, which this year marks 64 years since its inception.
We are determined that the chimpanzees will remain, and that's partly or almost wholly because we are working with the villagers who live in and around their habitat and who now understand that protecting the chimpanzees means protecting the forests, which protects their future. So we will not allow the chimpanzees to disappear. The only thing that might be a problem is climate change.
On the other hand, the Director General for Tanzania Commission for Science and Technology, COSTECH, Dr. Amos Nungu, calls on scholars and other stakeholders to continue developing various groundbreaking researches to spur solutions to various challenges in the society.
Well, but research are relevant to the community, and especially for this, I mentioned research relating to animals, chimpanzee and the rats. They are very relevant and they connect directly with the societies. There is other research relating to elephants, how to test them, but specifically Jane Goodall Institute, they are focusing on the chimpanzee. Research needs time, investment, in terms of, resources, in terms of time, but also money, and patience.
Labor unions urge the Human Rights and Good Governance Commission to review some labor laws that seem to restrict human rights at workplace. The call has been made by some trade union leaders during a meeting involving the Human Rights and Good Governance Commission and the trade unions, aiming at receiving recommendations on what should be done to improve the National Action Plan and human rights. Here is Antonia Kivaria with more details.
Acts of violation of human rights at workplaces and business areas bring together the leaders of Human Rights Commission and Good Governance and trade unions to discuss how to stop such actions based on the core values of social democracy, freedom, justice, and solidarity. The Vice Chairman of the Commission for Human Rights and Good Governance, Mohammed Hamis Hamad, says his commission is endorsed to protect and promote the rights at workplaces. They work closely with the government.
We are collecting views so that we can identify gaps and how to address those gaps. Okay? Because in the process of developing this NAP, if you have this NAP, that means National Action Plan on Business and Human Rights, we'll come to the conclusion that these are gaps raised by including this group. And these are recommendations how to address these gaps.
On the other hand, the Executive Secretary of the Commission, Patience Twina, says the action plan is expected to set and ensure human and business rights are implicated in different aspects, such as extractive and energy, manufacturing and processing, agriculture and blue economy, digitalization and communication, trade and finance.
There's been a number of engagement with the stakeholders, and almost most of the stakeholders have been involved. And at this point, we are meeting with the Workers' Congress and their sector representatives. So we think that these engagements are going to enrich, and we hope that their opinion are going to be included in our plan.
TUCTA's participation is of paramount importance in the representing workers' voices and the inclusion of decent work agenda, which will ensure the labor standards are upheld in daily business practice.
Our participation in this, it's a symbol that we are, it's a symbol on how best workers can contribute to the development of our country, but also to ensure that we have inclusion, especially of workers. We have women workers, youth workers, and workers who have different sorts of disabilities on how they can be accommodated.
Reporting from Dar es Salaam, it's Antonia Kivaria from TBC News.
It's time now for today's exchange rates according to the Bank of Tanzania, BOT.
Where President William Ruto has sacked nearly all his cabinet ministers. The announcement comes after weeks of unrest over a taxation bill. Ruto has cancelled the proposed tax increases. Demonstrations continued calling for him to resign.
After a holistic appraisal of the performance of my cabinet and its achievements and challenges, I have today decided to dismiss with immediate effect all the cabinet secretaries and attorney general of the Republic of Kenya, of the Cabinet of Kenya, except the Prime Cabinet Secretary and Cabinet Secretary for Secretary and Secretary for and Cabinet Secretary for Foreign Affairs and Diaspora Affairs, and of course, the office of the Deputy President is not affected in any way.
From Kenya to Khartoum.
Let's take a look at the sports news now. In sports, Azam FC head coach Yusufa Dabo says they have set good strategies towards their participation in the CAF Champions League this season and helping to beat Rwanda champions APR in the opening game of preliminary stage. Speaking in Zanzibar, coach Dabo admits that APR is one of the best teams in East African zone, but they are ready to outclass them in the continental showdown and position well in the CAF Champions League.
It's a big team in Rwanda. They have 22 titles, so it's a big team who has a bit to win. But we have this mentality to win, to grow up, and we have big ambition about this competition. Like I told my players, of course, we need to have this ambition, but we need also to be humble.
If Azam FC eliminates APR, they will play Zanzibar counterpart JKU, which is drawn to play Egyptian Pyramids in the first stage of CAF Champions League. CAF Champions League Confederation Cup draw took place in Egypt earlier today. All the best to Azam and other teams representing Tanzania. That marks the end of the news bulletin for tonight. Don't miss our next bulletin in Kiswahili at 11 p.m. On behalf of the whole team, I am Nasa Kingu. Good night.
Angalia TBC1, ukweli na uhakika.